Hello everyone, I'm Matt from MediaMatt, and today we'll be tackling, finally, the Jaws franchise as a whole, starting with the one that started it all, Jaws. Released in 1975 and directed by Steven Spielberg, Jaws was a monumental success to say the least. So much so that it was often considered the very first summer blockbuster. Even if you've never seen the movie, you know the story. A killer shark lays claim to a small beach town known as Amity Island, so three men team up to kill the shark and restore order back on the island before anyone else becomes shark bait. As I write the script for this video, I've come to a realization, and it's that reviewing this film is kind of tricky for me. Obviously I love Jaws and have wanted to review it for a very long time, but it's difficult to say anything that you haven't already heard. I'll do my best, I suppose, MediaMatt style. So without further ado, let's take a look at Jaws and see if we're going to need a bigger script for this review. The movie begins with an underwater POV shot of the cameraman posing as a shark. I mean, come on, we all used to do this when we were swimming in the pool at one point. At least, I know I did. We then switch over to a nighttime sequence where we see a group of college kids doing what they do best, drinking beer and making out. Which, as we all know, is punishable by law and is a sacred sin to commit in a horror film, especially slasher films. It's like ringing a dinner bell for a killer. Two characters from the group decide to go for a night swim. The guy is drunk and can hardly stand up straight. But as the girl dives deep into the water, we see that pesky cameraman getting closer and closer to its first victim. This scene alone has become iconic. It's the first kill of the film and it looks and feels horrifying. The way she is being pulled back and forth repeatedly and the screams of agony go a long way to showcase the horrors of this film in just the first 5 minutes. Now I shouldn't have to tell you this, but some of the best scenes in Jaws are often considered the ones where we don't actually see the shark. And this is just the first kill, mind you. The filmmakers have found many other ways to show shark attacks without actually showing the shark. We then transition into the following morning where we meet our protagonist, Martin Brody, played excellently by the late great Roy Scheider. The film takes time to establish he's married, a father of 2 kids, and is the chief of police for a small town known as Amity Island. It's nothing grand, but I appreciate the little bits of information. It goes a long way to making us connect with the characters. In the following scene, we find out the remains of the girl have washed up on the beach. The characters chalk it up to many things like a boating accident or drowning, but Brody has a feeling that it's something worse. He orders to have signs made to keep the beaches closed for the time being while they take care of the threat. However, we have a stern mayor that won't budge because, after all,
Amity is a summer town. We need summer dollars.
The next scene is filled with tension as we see Chief Brody looking for any and all threats. The beach is filled with residents, and we all know something bad is going to happen. Enough time passes and we witness a boy being eaten by the shark. This results in a town meeting to discuss the closure of the beach, at least temporarily while they deal with the shark. Obviously the townsfolk are upset by this. Always like that line. It's also here we are introduced to Quint, played excellently by Robert Shaw. He states that he'll kill the shark for $10,000 and not a penny less.
For that you get the head, the tail, the whole damn thing.
Later that evening, we see 2 fishermen attempting to catch the shark themselves. They take some meat, stick it on a hook, and tie it to the pier in an attempt to catch the shark. However, in this case, they're woefully unprepared. He swims back to the shore as fast as he can, all while the dock is being pulled in his direction. This scene obviously is more for the tension and scare factor if nothing else, but I like the way that it's shot. Again, it's another example of how they actually use a creative way to capture the shark attack without actually seeing the shark. It's just shot very well. I love it. He manages to get back to the dock not just unscathed, but with some humor intact.
Can we go home now?
The following day, a group of boats and fishermen set out to kill the shark, but not before we're introduced to another highlight of the film, Matt Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss. The fishermen do end up capturing a shark, but Hooper comes to the conclusion that it's most likely not the same one due to the difference in bite radius.
What is this bite radius crap?
Hey man, don't look at me, I'm just here to review the film, okay? The same evening, we see the two head out into the open waters and see what they can find. They find one of the fishermen's boats, and Hooper decides to take a look. It's quite obvious there's nobody in sight. Personally, I'm not a big fan of jump scares. However, I've always admired this one because they just show it. There's no, loud sound effect, it just happens. And it's quite scary because, again, no shark in sight, but, still something that leaves behind an impact. I remember the first time I actually went and saw this movie again in theaters when it re-released with my brother, who hadn't seen the movie since he was a kid, and when this scene came up, he actually jumped into his seat a little bit. It was quite funny, actually. Back on the beach, Brody and Hooper are imploring the mayor to keep the beaches closed as the shark is still out there. But the mayor is only concerned with one thing.
Money!
Brody decides the best course of action is to have spotters on the beach to look out for the shark. All goes well until we see a fin emerge. However, despite all the residents splashing in the water and whatnot, the shark doesn't actually attack for once.
What's going on out there?
I swear, officers, he tempted me with Pokemon cards. How could I refuse? Shortly after, however, the actual shark shows up and eats its latest victim. Well, by the looks of it, somebody didn't skip leg day. This encounter was the final straw for Brody, as his son was almost attacked himself. He finally gets the mayor to sign the form and hire Quint to kill the shark. Brody and Hooper agreed to go with him, however Quint needs his fair share of equipment first.
Champagne, patty de foie, Iranian caviar, and don't forget the color TV.
Yeah, sure. Anything else?
Well, I'm gonna need 12 jars of jelly, 2 cans of worm bait, and some tackles.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
And I'm gonna need a video game console, some game cartridges, 12-pack of root beer, a couple bags of chips, maybe a mattress with a couple of comfy pillows.
Whoa. Hold on a second. I can understand the video game console and the TV for downtime in between the shark action, but like, what do you need with a bunch of pillows and mattresses?
Isn't it obvious? We're gonna smother this son of a bitch to death.
Shit, is it too late to quit now? The men grab the last of their equipment, say their goodbyes, and head out to sea. Now, I love this film overall, but I think many will agree that Jaws is at its best when we're out at sea with our trio. They have pretty good chemistry, and this is where the tension is at its greatest, not to mention some of its funniest moments.
You pull the wrong one. You screw around with these tanks and they're gonna blow up.
Aha, nothing like some good old-fashioned foreshadowing. As Brody throws some chum into the water, we get our first good look at the shark.
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
You see, I think the shark was upset because it was chum bucket chum, and I don't even think plankton would eat that shit.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Funnily enough, this actually is one of the most quoted lines in the entire film, and it was completely ad-libbed by Roy Scheider himself. It wasn't even part of the script. It's here we learn Quint's plan, to shoot harpoon bolts into the shark that are attached to some barrels. The idea is that the shark will eventually be forced to surface with all the barrels pulling him up. The following scene is another personal highlight, with our trio drinking and discussing scars they've gotten throughout the years. As they talk, Quint retells his experience on the USS Indianapolis and how his crew were stranded at sea for days on end while being swarmed by sharks. This scene is incredible, probably my favorite in the whole movie. It's got everything: character development, comedy, tension, and horror all wrapped up in a nice tight package. Even Steven Spielberg has said that this is his favorite scene, which I can see why. It was difficult to film because Robert Shaw was actually drunk while filming this scene. Frustrated with his acting and having to do several takes, Spielberg decided to just let it flow and see how it would go. Even Richard Dreyfuss himself said that he was captivated during Shaw's performance. The shark shows up to spoil their fun, and as a result, salt water gets into the boat and damages it. As a result, Brody grows paranoid and tries to phone in some help, but Quint doesn't like paying phone bills, so he puts a stop to that immediately. You can never go wrong with a message in a bottle. After shooting some more barrels into the shark, they tie them to the boat so as not to let it escape. However, the shark actually starts towing the boat, so Quint cuts the rope. The crew decides the best thing to do now is draw the shark into the shallows and drown him, but because of the damage the boat has endured, its engine shorts out and they're now stranded at sea. The men all feel defeated at this very moment, with Quint even throwing them a pair of life jackets. Yeah, this jacket's a little snug. You think you can get one that's a little bit bigger? Look, if I'm gonna die, can I at least die comfortably? I don't think that's too much to ask, right? Hooper tells them he can use the cage to get close enough to the shark and pump him full of poison. He descends into the cage and is quickly attacked by the shark. Hooper escapes down below, hiding on the ocean floor. Brody pulls the cage back up, but Hooper is nowhere to be seen. Shortly after, the shark jumps onto the boat and eats Quint alive. This scene is very difficult to watch, and not just because of the gore, but because of what it represents. For most of Quint's life, he's been hunting sharks out of revenge for what happened during the Indianapolis, so it's kind of poetic in a way that his obsession was his downfall. Brody manages to get one of the scuba tanks into the shark's mouth, and as it approaches Brody, we get one of the most badass kills in any movie.
Smile, you son of a...
Thus ends our movie. The shark is finally dead, the town is safe, Hooper resurfaces, and the two safely paddle their way back to the beach. Or they could have been eaten by those seagulls. I mean, that's my canonical ending anyway. What else can be said about Jaws that hasn't already been said? Of course I love this movie. Jaws is approaching its 50th birthday at the time of this review, and it still, for the most part, holds up incredibly well. I rewatch it just about every summer, and it never loses steam for me. Jaws is just a well-made monster movie with a lovable cast of characters and several quotable lines. If I were to point out any flaws that the movie might have, it would probably be some of the footage that they used during the cage sequences. Seeing actual footage of the shark and then switching between the mechanical one is a bit jarring to say the least. However, I can see why they used it for the time. The mechanical shark was notorious for failing constantly while filming, so splicing some actual footage of the shark was probably for the best. And I admit, while the mechanical shark still looks incredible, it does seem a little stiff nowadays. However, keep in mind I'm nitpicking. I'll always prefer this over CGI because it's right there physically in front of the actors, which makes it more believable. At the end of it all, it should come as no surprise I love Jaws. It's a timeless masterpiece that despite being rough around the edges, it has a certain charm that can never be duplicated with a sequel or remake. And speaking of sequels, there are 3. Yes, there are 3 Jaws sequels, which I have some thoughts on. However, that will have to wait for another time. With all that being said, thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys all next time. Take care.